Hi, Kipsters. Welcome back to your second Wit and Wisdom lesson this week. Just as a reminder, this week you do not have Wit and Wisdom small groups, but you are still doing this asynchronous work so that we can stay caught up on our lessons. And so if you have any questions, since you won't have time to ask your teacher about them in your Wit and Wisdom small groups this week, you can always text or call your teacher or me to ask me any questions that you might have about Wit and Wisdom, but I'm going to be trying to comment on all of your seesaw work so that you still get some feedback this week, even though we don't have small groups. Our very first thing we're going to do today is we're going to warm up our brains by creating something called a tableau. What's it called? A tableau is a fancy way of saying that we are going to act out a scene from the book, and we're going to freeze our bodies so that we can hold that scene and take a picture of it. So that I can check your thinking about what is happening in the text. So anytime that you see these two masks emoji, that means that you are going to act it out by creating a tableau. So I'm going to show you how I would create a tableau for this first page, and then you're going to get to the chance to make your own. And towards the end of the lesson, you will be able to submit a tableau on Seesaw as well. And so first, we're going to act out this first page. It says, in a flash, every beast in the zoo was stampeding to learn all about this new something called reading. So I'm remembering from our last lesson that we added the word stampeding to our word wall, and that means to run super crazily. So for my tableau, I'm going to stand up, tilt my screen up a little bit, and I'm going to pretend like I'm running super fast, stampeding, and I'm going to freeze like that. That's all that you need to do for a tableau is act out the scene and freeze, and then later you will be taking pictures of yourselves acting out a tableau from different parts of the book, and you can turn those in on Seesaw. But it's basically just a frozen scene from the book acting out what the animals or the characters are doing. So now that you've seen me act out stampeding, your job is going to be to act out what's happening on this next page. So take a second to look at the picture. You can choose if you want to be Molly McGrew or the otter. And if you have a sibling or maybe a parent that wants to help you act this out, that would be awesome too. Or you can do it all by yourself. But I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to get into your tableau pose. Remember, you're acting either like the otter, getting the book, or Molly, dropping the book down to the otter for your tableau. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds to act out the scene and freeze in 10, 9, 8, 7, look at these awesome acting tableaus. 6, 5, 4, looking good. 3, 2, 1. Make sure your body's frozen. I'm going to look at all those tableaus. Wow, looking so sharp acting out that first scene. Way to go, Kipsters. Now that we've had a chance to start warming up our brains, we are going to think about something that we are wild about. So we learned in the book that once Molly McGrew came to the zoo, all of the animals went wild about books. And to be wild about something means that you're crazy about it, you like it a ton, and it's one of your favorite things. So this morning, I want you to think about what is something that you are wild about. Take a second to think. Some things I thought you might be wild about are maybe donuts or ice cream or puppies or video games or TV or the mountains or being outside. Take a second to think. What is something you are wild about? At the end of this video, you're going to go back to Seesaw and share with me, I'm wild about, But you don't have to worry about going back to Seesaw yet. Just stick your idea of something you're wild about in your brain, and you're going to share with me at the end. I'm going to share mine with you first so that you have an idea, but I can't wait to see what you all are wild about. So something that I am wild about is cooking. I love to cook meals for my friends and my families, and that's something that I'm crazy about doing. So that's what I'm wild about, and I can't wait to hear what you are wild about. Now that our brains are warmed up, we're going to add our word wild to the word wall under our W so that we can remember it and hold on to it through the year. So our next word on the word wall is wild. Now we're going to jump into our lesson with our brains all warmed up. And today we are going to be answering our content question, which is what is happening in wild about books? And we're going to answer this question, what is happening, by answering some different questions about different parts of the book so we can put all of our ideas together and come up with an idea about what's happening in wild about books. And now this is about our 5th or 6th or 7th day talking about Wild About books, so you probably already have a pretty good idea of what's happening in the story. We're just going to narrow that focus down a little bit and make sure that we can share our ideas about what is happening. So if you remember, the words in the story tell us what is happening, and the illustrations in the story show us what is happening. So today we're going to be looking at the words and the illustrations to come up with an idea of what the story is all about. So first we're going to listen to a portion of the book. Your job is to think about what are the animals doing by listening to the words and looking at the pictures. So while we're watching this clip, you're thinking, what are the animals doing?
It started the summer of 2002 when the Springfield librarian Molly McGrew by mistake drove her bookmobile into the zoo. Molly opened the door and she let down the stair, turned on the computer, and sat in her chair. At first, all the animals watched from a distance, but Molly could conquer the strongest resistance.
So I want you to take a second to think, what are the animals doing? What are the animals doing when Molly gets to the zoo? Now, you're going to go ahead and act out that scene to show what the animals are doing. So I'm going to play that clip one more time for you. When you see what the animals are doing when Molly crashes into the zoo, I want you to go ahead and act out your tableau. Remember, that means a frozen action for the book. So your job is to act out what the animals are doing. I'm going to play that clip one more time. As you're watching, you're getting into your tableau to show me what the animals are doing.
It started the summer of 2002 when the Springfield librarian Molly McGrew by mistake drove her bookmobile into the zoo. Molly opened the door and she let down the stair, turned on the computer, and sat in her chair. At first, all the animals watched from a distance, but Molly could conquer the strongest resistance.
I'm going to pause it right there. I see lots of different animals on this page. Your job is to act out what the animals are doing in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Look at those poses. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me look at all those tableaus. Awesome job, Kipsters. You should have acted out that all of the animals were looking and watching Molly. So you might have looked something like this, matching the animals looking out of the windows of the zoo to see what's going on with Molly and her bookmobile. Now that you've had a chance to act out that scene, we're going to listen to another clip from the book. This time your job is to think, how did Molly get the animals' attention? So you're watching and thinking, how did Molly get the animals' attention?
By reading aloud from the good Dr. Seuss, she quickly attracted a mink and a moose, a wombat, an oryx, a lemur, a lynx, 8 elephant calves, and a family of skinks.
All right, friends, what is Molly doing that gets the animals' attention? I see all the animals are looking at her, but what is she doing now? Now that you've had a chance to think about what Molly's doing, you're going to go ahead and act it out. So I'm going to play that clip one more time. And just like before, as the clip is playing, you are going to be Molly and you are going to act out how she gets the animals' attention. So I'm playing the clip one more time and you are acting it out as the clip plays.
By reading aloud from the good Dr. Seuss, she quickly attracted a mink and a moose, a wombat, an oryx, a lemur, a lynx, 8 elephant calves, and a family of skinks.
So you should have acted out that Molly was reading a book. So you might have done something like this to get all of the animals' attention. So at first the animals were just watching Molly, but as soon as she started reading the book, they all came to listen to her read. Our next question is, why did Molly have to teach the animals how to treat the book right? So I'm going to play another scene from the book for you. Your job is to think, why does Molly have to teach the animals how to treat the books right? What are the animals doing with the books that makes Molly have to teach them how to treat them with care? What are those animals doing?
Gently, Molly taught lessons in treating books right, for the boa constrictor squeezed Crichter too tight. Baby bunnies mucked up Goodnight Moon with their paws. Giant termites devoured the Wizard of Oz. And Bear's love of books was completely outrageous. They licked all the pictures right off of the pages.
What were the animals doing? Or why did Molly have to teach the animals how to treat the books right? Now that you've seen how the animals were treating the books, you're going to act out what some of the animals were doing to the books that made Molly have to teach them how to treat the books with care. So I'm going to play this clip for you one more time. When you see the animals treating the books without care, I want you to act out what one set of the animals are doing. So we heard about a lot of different animals and how they were treating the books. Your job is to act out what one group of animals was doing with the books while the clip plays, and I cannot wait to see those tableaus.
Gently, Molly taught lessons in treating books right, for the boa constrictor squeezed Crichter too tight. Baby bunnies mucked up Goodnight Moon with their paws. Giant termites devoured the Wizard of Oz. And Bear's love of books was completely outrageous. They licked all the pictures right off of the pages.
Awesome, friends. I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to get into your pose. I heard about 4 different types of animals treating the books in different ways, and so you can choose whichever one you want to act out. You have 10, 9, 8, getting into your poses in 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me see those poses. Ooh, I see some kipsters acting like the bears licking off the pages. I see some kipsters acting like the snakes squeezing the books too tight. I see some kipsters acting like termites biting the books. And I also see some kipsters acting like baby bunnies with mud all over their paws getting it on the pages. Way to go, kipsters. Show yourself some silent love. Awesome job acting out those scenes. By using our bodies to act out the book, we're able to better understand what is happening in the story. So now we are going to jump into practicing a new activity for first grade. And this is actually something that the animals at the zoo learned how to do as well. What else did the animals at the zoo learn how to do? Go ahead and pause your video and call it out. The animals learned how to. Awesome job, Kipsters. The animals also learned how to write. Some of the animals were writing with their tails, with their paws. And so today we are also going to get the chance to start our own writing. Say yes. Writing about reading is a great way for us to stick ideas into our brains so that we remember them. It's also a great way for us to share our ideas with others so that they can read and think about those same ideas. So today I'm going to show you how I practice writing. And you are going to think about what steps do I take to write in my response journal. So I'm going to go ahead and find my composition notebook journal, which I have right here. You might have a journal that looks like this. If you don't have this journal, that's okay. You can just use a blank piece of paper, but it's really important to make sure that your paper has lines so that we can make sure our writing is nice and neat. So I'm going to show you how I start writing in my response journal. You're thinking about what steps does Miss Harden take? What steps does Miss Harden take? Okay, so the first thing that I'm thinking is I see here that I have a sentence stem that I need to use for my writing. My sentence stem says, one type of animal in the story is, Okay, so I'm thinking to myself, what was one of the types of animals in the story? You know what? I think I'm going to go back and look at my book and look at the different types of animals in the story. You don't have a hard copy of this book, but that's okay because you can always look back and look at the read aloud or other clips from this lesson to think about the types of animals. I just have a copy of our book, so I'm going to look into that copy. I'm thinking about one type of animal in this story. So I'm going to flip through. What is my favorite type of animal in this story? Oh, wow. I remember that the pandas demanded books in Chinese. So I'm going to go ahead. Okay, one type of animal in the story is pandas. Now that I've shared my thinking out loud, I'm going to say it one more time just to make sure that it makes sense. One type of animal in the story is pandas. Okay, now that I shared my thinking out loud, I'm going to write down my sentence stem. One type of animal in the story is, okay, great. So now I have the start of my sentence stem, which you can see up on the screen. I made sure that I started my writing over at the red line And when I got all the way down to the other red line, I switched to the next line. So I went down one line to the next line. I also made sure that all of my letters fit in between the lines, and I started my sentence with a capital letter. Those are some things that you'll want to check for as you start your writing. Now that I have my sentence stem written down, one type of animal in the story is, I'm going to do my best to sound out loud the animal that I want to share. So I know I wanted to write about pandas. Pandas. Okay, so I know that starts with a P. That's an A. Pandas. DAS. Your job is to do your very best that you can with your spelling. If you don't spell it perfectly right, that's okay, as long as you're sounding it out and writing down the sounds that you can hear. Okay, one type of animal in the story is pandas. I'm going to add my period to the end of my sentence. That's that little dot that tells me that my sentence is over. Now that I'm done with my writing, I'm going to go back and read it one more time just to double check that it makes sense. One type of animal in the story is pandas. Okay, perfect. My sentence makes sense when I read it out loud, and it answers the question about what one type of animal in that book is. Now that I've shared my writing with you, I want you to think about the steps that I took to write my response. The first thing that I did was I thought about what I wanted to say, and I used the text to help me remember what was happening in the book. Next, I said it out loud to make sure that it made sense. And then last, I carefully wrote my thinking down so I could read it. There was one extra step I added to the end, which was that I reread my sentence out loud after I wrote it so that I could make sure that my thinking made sense in writing. So, Kidsters, this is the end of our lesson, but you are going to turn in your own writing to Seesaw. So first, in your response journal, just like me, you are going to write down our sentence stem. One type of animal in the story is And you are going to write down any type of animal that you saw in the story. Maybe it was your favorite animal. Maybe it was the animal you thought was the most interesting. As long as it's different from pandas, which was my example, you are good to go. So your steps are going to be think about what you want to say or think about the animal you want to share that you read in the book. You're going to say your sentence out loud. One type of animal in the story is so you can make sure it makes sense. And last, you're going to carefully write your thinking. Once you're done sharing your thinking in your journal, you are going to take a picture of it, holding it up just like this on Seesaw so that I can see that work. So today on Seesaw, you should submit 1, your answer to what you are wild about. You can use your voice to record that. And 2, a picture of your writing in your response journal. I can't wait to see all those responses on Seesaw, and I will see you all later. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.